Today we're going to take a look at how the Weber Summit Kamado compares to my Hunsaker Drum Smoker. And generally the things that I say about the Hunsaker, they also hold true for other drum smokers like those made by Gateway, Pit Barrel Cooker, UDS, which is an ugly drum smoker. Generally, they act and cook the same way. The biggest thing that these two types of cookers have in common is that they are both extremely easy to operate. If you have any experience with a kettle cooker, then you'll be able to pick up a Weber Summit Kamado and get going right away. Even if you don't have experience with a kettle, the learning curve on a Summit Kamado is very low. Just get in a few cooks and you will be just fine. For drum smokers, fill up your charcoal basket with coals, light the fire, and then you put that drum basket into the bottom of the drum cooker, and then that's pretty much it. You might make some adjustments depending on the build of your drum smoker. If it has an exhaust, which was one of the reasons that I was attracted to the Hunsaker, I could make adjustments both at the intake and at the exhaust. Other drums like a Pit Barrel Cooker, they don't have that mechanism. They're just designed to just cook the way they're gonna cook. This leads me into some of the differences between drum smokers and the Weber Summit Kamado. One of the key differences is temperature control. On a lot of drum smokers where you don't have the ability to make adjustments, it's just gonna cook the way it cooks. And usually those temperatures might run a little bit higher than what you might get in a typical smoker. So I know that with my Pit Barrel Cooker, I feel like the temperature usually lived around 300, 325. In my Hunsaker, which allows me to make adjustments both in terms of the amount of air coming in through the intake, as well as being able to control things at the exhaust. I can make these adjustments and I can get my temperature dialed in if I want 250, 275, pretty easy to do on a drum smoker. I think it kind of naturally wants to be around the 300-degree range. Because of the design of drum smokers where your heat source is at the bottom of the drum and then your food is going to be up above, either on the grate or hanging, that naturally lends itself to indirect cooking. So drum smokers are primarily for smoking food. It's not what you would want if your intent is to get a nice sear like on your steak, where you get like a high temperature and then you need that fuel source to be directly underneath the steak. So you're not gonna get sear marks on a drum smoker. On the other hand, the Weber Summit Kamado is what I would consider a jack of all trades type of cooker. It's extremely versatile. So that means not only can you smoke on a Weber Summit Kamado, but you can also grill. You can do high temperature cooking as well. Any style of outdoor cooking that you want to do, you can do it with the Weber Summit Kamado. I find that with both cookers, slight adjustments are usually all that's needed during the cook. They're both just really easy to cook with. Today I'm going to be smoking beef ribs in both cookers. Gonna fill them up with lump charcoal with some pecan and cherry wood chunks. And I'll just be looking for some basic things. Obviously we wanna know, is there a difference in taste? Is the smoke profile significantly different between the two cookers? I'll also be looking at the appearance, and lastly, I'm going to be looking at tenderness. Does one produce a more tender beef rib than the other? Let's see how the Weber Summit Kamado holds up against my Hunsaker Drum Smoker. For both smokers, we're gonna set them up with water pans to both stabilize temperatures. Also to help with the cleanup by giving the grease someplace to go. In the Weber Summit Kamado, that means I'm also using the diffuser plate. Even though the Hunsaker doesn't have a diffuser plate, the coals will be located significantly lower in the drum than they are in the Summit Kamado. That provides a natural setup for indirect cooking. inside of a drum smoker. We're gonna put our beef ribs on the Weber Summit Kamado. This is a 3-bone plate. We're about 1 hour into the cook, and I just wanted to share an observation on both smokers. I'm not gonna open it up because, you know, when you're peeking, you ain't cooking, but just wanted to do something similar to what I did when I compared the Summit Kamado to the Kamado Joe. I had noticed that the smoke coming out of the Kamado Joe looked darker, more gray than the smoke coming out of the Summit Kamado, and that did generate a lot of comments and a lot of theories about why that was. My thoughts coming into this cook, the drum smoker, the Hunsaker, and the Summit Kamado are more similar than not when it comes to the build. And my prediction is that I think it's probably going to be more difficult, at least for me, to be able to tell the difference in taste between the two. We'll all have to stick around to see whether or not that holds true. And one observation that I've noticed during the first hour of this cook is that the smoke coming out of both the Summit Kamado and my drum smoker basically is invisible. Can't even see any smoke coming out of either cooker. One thing that I did to make the cooks more similar is I did add a water pan to both. The water pan helps with catching drippings and then also helps stabilize temperatures. My drum tends to like to smoke a little bit hotter, but I've noticed that with that water pan, my temperature has been holding pretty steady at about 225, and I've got that exhaust wide open. I'm just using the built-in thermometer, and I know it's not the exact temperature at the food grate. I'm just using this as a gauge. More or less, the fact that it's holding steady is what I like to see. It reads 225. It could very well be 250. I'm just good knowing that it's at a smoking temperature and it's holding steady without fluctuations. And doing the same thing on the Summit Kamado, just going off of the built-in temperature, and it's been holding steady at 250 throughout the cook. So those are kind of like my benchmarks. If I start to see the temperature shift from 250 in the Summit Kamado up or down, or up or down from 225 in the drum, if it's a dramatic shift, then I'll consider making some type of an adjustment with the vent openings. But as long as they're both holding steady, I'm pretty happy, and I love that both of them are producing a very nice, clean smoke. Another hour has passed, so let's take another look just for kicks. Remember that benchmark for the Weber Summit Kamado, we were at 250. We're still hanging pretty close to 250. Looking at the built-in thermometer, clean smoke, invisible smoke. Looking at the Hunsaker, benchmark with 225, and it's still hanging right at about 225 according to the built-in thermometer. Clean, invisible smoke. Very similar in terms of being able to hold steady temperatures. And as I've said in the past, I do believe these are the two cookers that I consider to be the easiest to cook on, because once you get the temperature dialed in, very little in terms of any adjustments. If I needed to make an adjustment, I would just do so up at the exhaust, and it would just be little micro changes in order to get that temperature back where I need it to be. There are only a couple of reasons that I would anticipate temperature changes. If the water that I put in those aluminum pans dissipates, then I think I could see a rise in temperature, a spike. And then on the flip side, if I begin to run low on coals, if the fuel begins to burn out, then I would start to see a temperature drop. So those are really the only two things where I anticipate a significant change. And then other things could happen, like if it became super windy, that might cause a temperature spike. you know, things like that. But otherwise, things are holding steady. We'll check in again. If I do feel like I need to make some type of an adjustment, I'll let you guys know. We're almost 6 hours into the cook, and I gotta tell you, the aroma coming off of those beef ribs, it just smells really good out here. It's just a fantastic smell coming off of those beef ribs. I wish you guys could get a whiff of it. But I did want to check in and let you know of a couple of adjustments that I did have to make to both of the cookers. At 3.5 hours, the temperature on the Hunsaker dropped from that baseline 225 to around 200 degrees. And I was thinking it could be one of two things. Either I was running out of fuel, or since I already had the exhaust fully open up at the top, that top vent, that I needed to allow more air to come in through the intake. And I was thinking 3.5 hours, that's not a very long time. I was gonna be surprised if I had run out of fuel. So I decided to go with my second thought, which was to open up that intake. On the Hunsaker, again, they've got that lever system at the bottom. When it's in the start position, the intake is fully open. When it's in the run position, it's half open. And then when it's in the fully closed position, that's when the intake is completely closed off. So I decided to move the lever from the run position to the start position. So that fully opened up the intake, and that did the trick. The temperature started to go up pretty quickly, and I decided to settle by putting the lever halfway between the start position and the run position. So the intake is about 3/4 of the way open, and that seemed to stabilize things at about 300 degrees inside of the Hunsaker, which I'm good with. At 4 hours and 15 minutes into the cook, the Weber Summit Kamado fell from the baseline of 250 down to around 225. So for that, that's a simple adjustment. I just decided to open up the exhaust at the top of the smoker all the way, fully open, and that stabilized the temperature at about 300 degrees as well. I'm good with that. We're 6 hours into the cook, so let's take a look and see how these ribs are coming along. And boy, they look about as good as they smell. Now you can hear that water boiling, so I know that at some point that water is going to completely dry out, and at that point I'm probably going to see some temperature spikes, so I do need to keep an eye on that. And ultimately we're looking for these ribs to be probe tender. They're already pretty tender. I'm getting a temperature reading of 184. So we're going to keep these on the smoker because I want to get them up to around 200, 202, 203, somewhere in there. So these are coming along pretty well, and I'm not going to wrap. We're at 8 hours. Just want to do another check, see where we're at. And that probe is going in with no resistance at all. So we don't even need to worry about the temperature because it is over 203 degrees. Let's take a look at what we've got inside of the Hunsaker. That's also going in like butter, and it is over 203 degrees. So that is probe ready and done. I'm gonna get both ribs off of the respective smokers and let them rest. All right, we went through the cook. Basically, it took 8 hours on both the Hunsaker and the Summit Kamado. Towards the latter part of the cook, I did have to make some adjustments on both cookers. The thing with the Hunsaker, it holds less charcoal in the basket than what I can get into the Weber Summit Kamado. So I knew that towards the end of the cook, there would probably be a point where I would need to add more fuel, and that is indeed what happened. Ultimately, that wasn't really a big deal. The ribs were still done in the same amount of time that I was able to get them done on the Summit Kamado. Once I replenished, added some charcoal, it was really easy to get the smoker back up to temperature. So here it is. We have both versions right here. This is the Weber Summit Kamado, And over here is the Hunsaker version. Now if you look at them, again, just salt and pepper. Visually, I don't see any difference. They look identical to me. So I'm just gonna cut into them. I'm using my Caveman Serbian chef's knife. Now, as of the date of recording this video, I am still running a promotion. Go to backyardsmokemasterbarbecue.com and enter to win. You have an opportunity. I'm giving away one of these Caveman Serbian chef knives, as well as a Maverick extended range thermometer. So giving away both. It's free to enter, so you've got nothing to lose but opportunity. So go ahead and enter, and maybe you'll be the lucky winner. So this is the version that came off of the Hunsaker. So take a look at that, guys. And here's a close-up look of the other one. Janine has arrived, so I don't want to give away which one is which, but I think you guys know which is which. All right, guys, so hopefully this gives you a better look to get some more lighting on the meat here. All right, so I'm gonna start off with this one right here. It's calling my name. Super tender. That's really good. I'm gonna try not to say too much because I wanna get Janine's reaction, but now I'm gonna try the other one. Okay, so sample number 1 is over here, and this is sample number 2.
Okay, so I come with a fork and a knife, so I'm ready.
So get some, from both samples. Just so you know, they both have the same rub. So this is just Central Texas style. All it is salt and pepper. Comparing the cook on the Weber Summit Kamado versus the Hunsaker Drum Smoker.
I know you weren't expecting to hear this from me, but I feel like your beef ribs they're just so gorgeous. So like, I don't know. They're just so beautiful. So, okay, I've tried this already.
Okay, so that was number 1.
Didn't choose any of these?
Yeah, any of those is just from the second smoker.
Okay. Wow. I'm like eating up candy or something. So it's like it's really easy on your mouth.
So, all right, so I'll take that. Kind of like beef candy.
Oh, I like this a lot. Every piece is smooth. It's so easy to chew. The bark is nice. This one's a little tougher on the bark. It's like something happened here, so it's a little different for me. I like this. This just, it goes down so well. I want to eat it all. I'm gonna take these pieces with me.
So you like number 2 better?
Absolutely. I still feel like this one is not as, I don't know, it just, I have to work a little bit harder. I like it, I'll eat it all day long, but I'll really eat that. Like I'll keep eating it. I'll come back tomorrow, eat it, kind of eat it.
So number 2, you like the tenderness
Very much so.
better than number 1.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not mad at number 1.
Okay, now what about the appearance?
I still like this one, for me.
So you like the appearance on number 2 more.
I like the taste more. I think that this one is just a little bit, I have to work a little bit harder. But I like it. I just don't like it as much as I like that one.
So, okay, so for you, it's like a clean sweep in terms of appearance, taste, tenderness. But what about the last part? What about in terms of the smokiness? Can you tell any difference?
No, but I can see more of the smoke ring. So I am thinking that this just got a better smoke on it. This one is a little bit harder for me to see it, if that makes sense.
So we can see more of the smoke ring.
Absolutely.
So you like number 2.
Oh, absolutely.
So do you think number 2 was from the Weber Summit Kamado, or do you think it was from the Hunsaker Drum?
I think number 2 was from the Kamado, and I think number 1 was from the drum.
Janine's opinion mirrors mine, actually. I do think that sample number 2 is more of the perfect cook. I don't necessarily taste a difference in terms of the smoke profile, but the smoke ring is definitely more present on number 2 than number 1. And I think then that also kind of makes you feel like the appearance, you know, you want to give the edge to number 2 over number 1, even though I think from the perspective of the bark, I think they look about the same.
I think that the bark on number 2 is tastier. I think the bark on number 1 got a little bit, it's a little tougher. And to me, I just think number 2, it held its temperature. It just feels like it just came together beautifully. And every bite is like delicious.
Very interesting. Actually, the only part that you were wrong about is that sample number 2 actually came from the Hunsaker Drum Smoker, whereas sample number 1 is the Weber Summit Kamado. And I agree, like you said, I mean, from the appearance, the tenderness, I do agree that number 1, the bark is a little more crunchy.
It is.
Whereas on number 2, I'm a humble guy, but I don't think I could do any better with number 2. You know, I think that one turned out about as well as I could have possibly hoped, which is interesting, you know, because I've been touting the Weber Summit Kamado as, you know, the versatile, do everything, can do everything smoker, and I still think it is. I've been using the Weber Summit Kamado a lot more than I've been using the drum smoker. And now that I've done the comparison, my theory is that the setup of the drum smoker, again, because it allows the fuel, the charcoal, to be much lower in the smoker than it is compared to the Weber Summit Kamado. Now, I did use the diffuser plate with the Summit Kamado. I think maybe the distance between the coals and the meat just allowed it to not be susceptible to the temperature spikes, getting too hot, cooking too fast, getting too crunchy. I think maybe what I could have done differently with the Summit Kamado is I probably should have been spritzing it more than I did. I only spritzed after the 7-hour mark, and I probably should have started spritzing maybe at the 6-hour mark and just being consistent in spritzing. And I think maybe that would have made a difference with the crust. Well, it gets interesting because in the last comparison where I compared the Kamado Joe chicken to the Weber Summit Kamado chicken, you preferred the Kamado Joe chicken because it had more of a smoked flavor. Again, guys, this is just a one-off, so again, not stating anything here as, you know, true fact, you know, that consistently, if cooked 10 times the exact same way, that the verdict would be the same.
Mine would.
Okay, Janine thinks it would be the same no matter what. But again, interesting. I really believe in the Summit Kamado. Again, I really love the versatility and the fact that you can do grilling and smoking and everything in between. But I've also consistently said that the drum smoker is extremely easy to cook on. I think it's even a little bit easier than the Summit Kamado, the way that it's designed, the setup and everything. The only negative that I have about today's experience with the drum is that I did have to replenish the fuel. So for a long cook, that's something that you have to keep an eye on, because that basket, it's limited in terms of what you can put in there. But in the end, that also, along with the distance of the fuel from the meat, in my opinion, I think also makes it more foolproof in being able to smoke your food and get results like this. So hopefully you got something from this video. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are. If you're on the fence between a Summit Kamado and maybe getting a drum smoker, let me know if you're leaning one way or the other. Love to hear from you guys. That's it. My name is Kenyatta Robinson. Thanks to my lovely wife Janine for agreeing to be in the taste test. I appreciate you guys watching. Do all that usual stuff. Like the video, video, subscribe, and like I said, leave comments. And best of all, share the video. If you have somebody that's into barbecue and maybe they're trying to make a decision, yeah, or if they want to get started, tell them about Backyard Smokemaster Barbecue. Check us out. All right, take care. We'll see you in the next one.